But now, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. Thanks, Naomi. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Yes, so I'm going to talk through how to train a GPT model. And specifically how to train a GPT model for your business. It's something that I have been spending a lot of time on. So just a really quick intro about me. I'm a lifecycle marketer, passionate about email, AI automations, and I have spent probably too many hours working with ChatGPT and custom GPTs to try to help speed up my email marketing work. And so I wanted to come on Parcel Unpacked and share what I've learned with the email geek community and maybe also learn from you. So this is just kind of some things that I've learned and picked up as I've spent way too many hours working on this. The first thing I wanted to do is just set some expectations around what I've noticed can and cannot be achieved with AI and ChatGPT. And because I think there are also some ideas that ChatGPT can kind of accomplish everything and do everything perfectly. And so the first thing is that ChatGPT is not going to generate perfect emails with one-shot prompts. One-shot prompts being, writing a prompt and then it returning the results. I have found that you are really going to need to break down the things that you're working on into smaller parts. So if you have a project where you're building out even an email, one email, I will break down into smaller parts. And those parts consist of separate prompts, and then I chain those prompts together. So one-shot prompt to write an email is not realistic. And then the second one is that the quality of what you get out of ChatGPT is only as good as how much time you spend on the prompt. And so I do think that prompt engineering is a whole talk in and of itself, and there are a lot of things that you can do to get even better at prompt engineering. But I also think that there are some basic things that just will get you 80% of the way there. So low-hanging fruit in terms of prompts, and so I think spending more time on writing better prompts will get you a lot better results. And then the third one is that I have never found ChatGPT to be able to write an email that I can then go put into my ESP and launch. So typically I'll notice that ChatGPT or custom GPTs can get content 60 to 70% of the way there. And then there's always some fine tuning. So there's just like expectations around how I use ChatGPT. For this talk, I'm specifically going to be talking about custom GPTs and not ChatGPT. I think there's a lot to be said about ChatGPT itself. But as you may or may not know, OpenAI launched the ability to create custom GPTs. And basically what custom GPTs are a ability to kind of have a custom version of ChatGPT where you upload your own knowledge base. And so I think there are some kind of heuristics in terms of when I decide on what I'm going to be using, whether I'm going to be using ChatGPT or custom GPTs. And high level, if I'm working on something that's highly specific or custom, I will use ChatGPT for content creation. But if I'm relying on something that I want to work on iteration or get feedback or enrich content, I will use custom GPTs. And I'll kind of dive into these a little bit more. So how I use ChatGPT for content creation, I will use ChatGPT when I'm working on a project that has a set of emails that follow the same pattern and they're specific and not repeatable. So it's not something that after this project, I'm probably not gonna use again. And so ChatGPT, I think, can be really useful for custom projects where I will build a prompt. A good example would be maybe I'm working on a series of lifecycle emails for a specific stage of user adoption. And those emails follow the same pattern where I have, an H1 body copy, 2 sections with featured images or featured content. And I need to use ChatGPT to generate content for that email. That's a great use case for ChatGPT. It's not a great use case to build custom GPTs because there's a lot of iteration that's highly specific to that pattern. Where I use and have been using custom GPTs is when I need to iterate on content. So subject line tests or adding versions based on ideal customer profiles or personas. I will use it for feedback. So I have GPTs that have our brand guidelines, and I will put copy in there and then have it make updates based on the brand guidelines. Yeah, let me know if I need to resize the slides. I'm not sure if they're too big or too small. And then the third one is enrichment. So pulling in relevant content from a library of data from my specific to my company and brand that will then enrich emails. So social proof, like we have a library of quotes, and I can then use that to pull in the content. Let me know if that's any better in terms of the slides. Sorry, it's super pixelated. Can also try sharing the slides, but okay, let's see if that's good. Okay, cool. So just going into the specific details here. So how I use custom GPTs for email marketing. I wanted to just touch about how like some of the GPTs that I've built that have been super useful. So the first one is brainstorming email brief is a GPT to position a list of features using jobs to be done. So going back to how I never use ChatGPT to like write a whole email, I will always break down a project into smaller parts. And so the first thing I do is like if I'm working on an email that's talking about a set of features for a product, I will have a GPT that I created that uses the jobs to be done framework, and then I will feed that a list of features, and then this GPT will expand on those features using the jobs to be done framework, and then basically say like it'll take a feature and it will position that in a way that is talking about the benefits to the user. And then I can use that expanded content based on a list of features to then work on subsequent parts of the email. So I will use that list of the JTBD framework for writing out the subject line or the pre-header. And that's really useful as like speeding up the process for having a requirement and then turning it into a format that will speak to the user, and then I can use for subsequent prompts. This is the brand guidelines implementation. So I have a GPT that I have uploaded all of our company's brand guidelines in terms of how we write and our copywriting guidelines. And I will draft an entire email using ChatGPT, not custom GPTs, and I will get the email, like all the components of it, and then I will paste an image of that email into this GPT, and then it will review the email and then provide feedback and make modifications to the copy based on our copywriting guidelines. So we have a lot of specific things on like how we use emojis and sentence case and kind of very, very granular things. And this one's really useful to make sure that, and kind of have a final check on emails to make sure it's following those formats. Similarly, I have a GPT that I will upload a screenshot of an email, and it will review that email from a visual critique perspective. I could probably combine these, but I found them useful to be separate. And so with this, I have rules from our email design system, and I also have like a visual representation of the email design system and how things should look. So it's a combination of text and copy that I've uploaded to this GPT. You can upload images, text, spreadsheets, and then I take a screenshot of the email. I really like using CleanShot because you can take these scrolling captures, and then it will provide feedback from a visual perspective on those emails. So this is another GPT, and I have all these GPTs just basically on bookmarks that I can then access. The fourth one, subject line testing. This one's pretty obvious, but what I did is I uploaded an export of all of our top performing subject lines in the past year into a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet is in the GPT that I use, and then I will feed it variations. I'll have an email that I'm working on. I'll share the subject line, and then I'll create variations of that subject line based on like what this GPT knows works specific to my my company. So I think this one's really useful because oftentimes if you just tell it to make a better version of a subject line, it doesn't have any examples, and so using examples is always giving ChatGPT examples is always super useful. ICPs personalization. So at my company, we do a lot of work with ICPs, ideal customer profiles. I went in and just downloaded as much content and dumped it into a text document around our ICPs. And then I created a GPT that's like an ICP GPT. How's that for acronyms? And this will then, I will then feed that in, produce email copy, so like the final version of the email, and then I will have it iterate on that based on what it knows about the ICP. And that's kind of my process for all of these, is I always have like the final version of the email that I then kind of go and refine. And then similarly for social proof, so we have a spreadsheet of testimonials, pull quotes, and case studies. And so I find this
Where'd he go? Aaron, you coming back? Come back. Perfect. That was easy.
I got booted somehow. Can you see? I guess I can't share my screen here. Sorry, guys. There you go. GPT returns.
You're giving away too much good knowledge.
All right. Can you see? Sorry to say this, but can you see the
looks
screen?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Social proof. So yeah, pull quotes, testimonials. I'll feed it the email, and then it will actually insert the social proof copy into that email. It'll find quotes that are relevant. So if I'm talking about a specific feature, it'll find quotes where I'm mentioning that feature, and then it'll insert that into the text. So I really like this one as well, because it doesn't, then I don't have to like go and find relevant pull quotes. So these are all the ways I have all these custom GPTs that I've used that are like private and I share with our team, but they're very specific to the work that I'm doing, and they all kind of leverage existing content. And you'll notice that none of these are focused on creating custom content. They're all kind of focused on either enriching content, providing feedback on content, or iterating on content. So just to touch briefly on best practices, when you, I don't know if anyone has, like if you've built a GPT, there is this feature where you can build GPTs using this kind of conversational back and forth. And I think it's useful to get started quickly, but I think what you'll find is that the results are pretty bad, and it just kind of keeps the prompt pretty short. And so my recommendation, and I don't use it, is to not use the GPT builder or the chat builder, and instead go into configure and manage your GPT there via a prompt. When I'm building custom GPTs, I will always work on the prompt first in a separate tool. So I will either use I'll just use ChatGPT, or I will use OpenAI Playground, because you can kind of work on prompts in a much easier. This is a typo, sorry. This should be Prometheus. So OpenAI Playground, and then there's also a tool called Prometheus, which is what you see here. And I will work on the prompt for the custom GPT until I find that the results are getting at what I want, and then I will load it into the GPT. So my recommendation here is to always work on the prompts outside of the actual custom GPT builder first before loading them in. And with basically what all that Prometheus does is it helps you structure a prompt better. So it helps you kind of have different parts of the prompt that then are fed into ChatGPT. So it looks like a complex thing, but it's actually pretty basic what it does. But I find it really useful to kind of iterate on prompts. So this tool is called Prometheus. For email marketing, I always like to use images in my emails instead of pasting in copy, because I find that it helps ChatGPT have better context of the email, and help delineate whether something's an H1 or a pre-header or body copy or CTA. So my tip is to use images of emails whenever possible, because I think the results are typically better. With my custom GPTs, I always like to use frameworks. So some things like I mentioned before, jobs to be done, or AIDA. There's also Fab framework, or things like divergent convergent thinking when I'm doing brainstorming. These types of frameworks help the GPT kind of anchor, and I've noticed better results by using frameworks. All of my prompts for custom GPTs follow a common format. So I'll have the request, at the top, so give me feedback on the subject line, the context, so what I'm trying to do with this, or what the context of the prompt is, examples, and then output rules. These two I think are really critical. Anytime you can give examples of how a header should look, how a subject line should look, what's specific to your company, if like you use sentence case for subject lines, giving those as examples is really useful. And the same goes for output rules. So output rules here, I will typically say, use Spartan language, or use minimal language, don't use corporate jargon. These types of things will really help controlling the output. And then in the prompt itself, this is kind of getting to basic prompt engineering stuff, but I always delineate the sections by using some kind of symbol, and the symbols have to be consistent. So if you look at this example here, this prompt for a GPT, I have the header, context, a space, 3 dashes, and then the content, and then 3 dashes. And so this is how I delineate sections of the prompt. And the consistency of using the same thing and the same spacing, I have found, will change the results. So if I have if things are inconsistent, it kind of throws things off. So these are some basic rules that I found that have been really useful in terms of improving the prompts for the custom GPTs. And then the other one that's not obvious, but the ordering of your instructions. So I will often find varied results based on when I include things. So I always like to include the request up top, but sometimes if I can get different results based on including the examples at the bottom or output rules. So that's another recommendation, is if you're not getting the results that you would like, I would recommend playing with the order as well. There's a lot of testing, and this is why I recommend using OpenAI or ChatGPT first before testing the prompt, or before testing in the actual custom GPT builder. Sorry, I'm trying to get. Okay, so to summarize, I think improving basic prompt engineering skills, breaking larger projects into smaller prompts and chaining them together, I think will greatly improve your outputs. Use ChatGPT for custom, specific, and non-repeatable content, so custom projects where you need to enrich content, and then lean on custom GPTs for feedback, enrichment, and iterations. Yeah, that's my recommendations. I have some bonus tips here. I really like to use Super Whisper, which is a voice to text that uses OpenAI's Whisper tool. So when I'm writing prompts, I will use Super Whisper as a tool to basically talk to ChatGPT and have it transcribe what I want, and that's really useful for me. And there also is sometimes I want to understand the thinking behind the response from GPT, and there's a term you can basically put in your custom GPT where you say verbose equals true, and you can add that as a flag. So if I'm asking for feedback on a subject line, I can include verbose equals true, and it'll tell me why it did that, and you can kind of cater to that in your prompt. I found this useful to kind of help diagnose and add more understanding as to why ChatGPT is recommending something. And then the last one is, if you are looking right now, if you are looking at other GPTs that other people have created in the marketplace, there is a prompt you can add to the GPT that will output the prompt that was used to create that GPT. And so you can learn from prompts. So I think this is actually useful. So because sometimes I use other GPT and I want to understand how they built it. And so there's a lot to learn here from how other people are doing that. So yeah, that's my how to train a GPT in a model in a nutshell. So hope that was helpful, everybody.
I love Ted's comment in the chat, just saying, dang, there's so much I need to learn about prompt engineering. I think that's a thought that is probably going through all of our heads right now. We do have quite a few questions in the chat, so I will tee you up for some of them here. I guess this is a broad one just to kick us off. What's the process to begin your own GPT? Aside from just going in and poking around, do you have any recommendations on where to point people to start?
Yeah, so if you have GPT-4, you need the paid version of ChatGPT to create a GPT, and there is that builder which you can go in and start just creating. But yeah, it's actually really simple. Once you have access to ChatGPT, you can just go in and I can show real quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, explore GPTs, and then you go create a version here. And then this is the interface with the builder. And you can say, like, you can talk to it here. And this is basically ChatGPT that's used to build a custom GPT. But sometimes I'll do this just to get started, and it'll kind of create some of the basics of it. But then configure is really where you want to be spending your time, and the name, description, whatever. But the instructions, this is where you'll put the prompt. And this is where I would spend all your time, is really working on perfecting this prompt. And I would start by working on this prompt in a separate tool like OpenAI or Prometheus. And then the code interpreter is used for spreadsheets, web browsing, obviously for web browsing. And this is where, when I'm uploading assets, I upload into this spreadsheets and text documents is what you upload. So I would start just getting the hang of you creating it from here, and creating a GPT from here, and then learning from that.
One of my favorite things that I saw pop up on your screen was whenever I type in Parcel to something like ChatGPT, it obviously interprets it being like a gift unwrapping or a package that you receive in the mail. So I usually have to do quite a bit of pre-training before ChatGPT understands what I'm trying to talk about, that it is in fact an email coding solution and not something that arrives in your mail. Next up, we have a question from Kathy. Have you tried measuring efficiency for implementing these GPT steps? How much time are you saving, or how much better are the end results? This is a great question. Might be hard to answer.
Like, is it actually worth the amount of time that goes into building the prompts? I think that's a great question. I think I will not use ChatGPT or custom GPTs for smaller projects, but where I have found it very useful to spend the upfront time for prompt engineering and getting the prompts right is like a project I'm working on right now, where I have to create 18 emails, and we have like a framework for the content, and it makes sense for me to spend the time to build the prompts to kind of scale the content creation for those 18 emails, and at least get 18 of those emails 60% of the way there. So I think that upfront cost is worthwhile. For the custom GPTs, it's really not. The prompts there are a lot more straightforward. So I think in those cases, there's less trade-offs and time spent.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Okay, this is actually a question from me that I will position. I didn't know that you could upload screenshots of emails to receive feedback on them. I'm just so curious, as I hope other people are as well, what kind of feedback you get. Is it you suggesting design enhancements? Are you asking it specifically, should I change the font size? Should I change the copy? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the visual feedback is new because with GPT-4 Vision, so now ChatGPT can analyze images, and so that's relatively new. But yeah, I found it useful. I think the design feedback is not like the same kind of feedback you get from your actual in-house designer, obviously. But I think the best use case I found for it is to make sure that ChatGPT has the full understanding of the hierarchy of the email. Because I think whenever I paste content in, sometimes it's not clear, unless I convert the email into Markdown or something, it's not clear the structure of the email. So I think it's really useful to just paste in images all the time in the ChatGPT of the actual images, because it saves a lot of like context that I can't provide it. I think my visual GPT is useful for basic things, but it's not like, of all the GPTs I have, it's not the most useful one.
Makes sense. Another question from Kathy, this is just another great one, spitting out amazing questions. What are some resources for learning prompt engineering?
I think there's, like, as most things, there's a lot of a lot of low quality content, and it's like there's so much going into this right now. But yeah, I can put together some resources. I have one specific course I learned like that got me enough information to improve my prompt engineering substantially, that I can recommend. So I can share those links. But I think there's a lot of
Probably
Mhm.
probably a little bit of trial and error too in a way, right? You learn what prompts it responds to in a way that you like the output of and what prompts aren't giving you what you need it to.
It's it's so much trial and error. Yeah, I really it's that's why I recommend using other tools to work on the prompts first, because it's a lot of back and forth to figure out what works. But I don't think it feels intimidating. When I first got into it, it felt intimidating because I feel like there's so much to learn. But I do think there are some basics that you can start using that will get you so much further along.
Mhm. Spicy question again from Kathy. Any security concerns for using GPTs? I'm not sure if any of us know off the top of our head or could cite problems that will probably emerge at some point. But for now, is it kind of a gray area, like a la 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 kind of vibe?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not a security expert. I know that OpenAI has now a team plan that you can subscribe to that will make sure that your content is not shared. And so I
Mhm.
think OpenAI is actively addressing this. But in terms of security concerns from uploading corporate data into ChatGPT, I think that's obviously a big thing, a good thing to be conscious of. And like, I don't upload user data obviously into
Mhm.
ChatGPT.
Mhm.
It's mostly pretty generic stuff, but I would, if you are concerned with security, I would look at the team version of
Mhm.
OpenAI.
Yeah. Seems like we have some exciting updates coming from GPT over this year to addressing a lot of these conversations that have emerged in the past, couple months to a year. We have a question from Chris. Is there a free version of something like Clean Shot apart from Control Print Screen, of course, for longer pages?
Control print screen, on Chrome, there's a full page screenshot extension that can do that, as long as you can have it. It doesn't allow you to. I really like Clean Shot because of the scrolling capture. You can like take a
Mm.
small version of the email, and then you can just scroll and capture the whole thing. But when I was not using that, there's a Chrome extension called Full Page Screenshot that does a pretty good job.
I also sometimes will use emailpreview.io, which I think is from Stephanie, a fellow email geek, where you can download the HTML file of your email and then upload it, and it'll give you a nice little
Oh yeah, great.
screenshot. Okay, one more question here. What did you mean when you said you use a framework like jobs to be done inside a GPT, like upload a PDF, explaining the framework in the prompt, hoping it knows?
Yeah, so I use the framework as a anchor for how I want the GPT to like build out features. So if I have a set of features I'm writing an email about, I will tell it to use the jobs to be done framework, and ChatGPT already knows all about that framework, and so that's a helpful kind of anchor to then provide the responses. And I find that much more useful than just say like, talk about these sets of features in as if you're a user. So anytime you can anchor something in a framework that ChatGPT already knows about, I think is useful. So I like the jobs to be done framework. I've had a lot of success with that, but I've also tried using the AIDA, attention, interest, desire, um, and then FAB, which is features, advantages, benefits. So like those types of frameworks, specific in the work that I do, are useful. But any framework that's kind of specific to copywriting is helpful to use in the prompts.
Amazing. Well, that is it for questions. Thank you so much for joining us to cap off day one. Erin, that was really insightful. And I think a good reminder that we should all just dive in and try it out and look at what other people are doing in the GPT space and see if it does add value to our own workflows. So really appreciate you coming and sharing your insights there. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks everybody. It's great. Great to see everybody.
And that wraps up our day one of Parcel Unpacked. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today for the past 4 hours. We talked about so much great email stuff. I hope you learned something about Anscript and Outlook. And tomorrow we have a whole session to kick us off on the future after Outlook, which is a pretty fun way to kick off the day. We have some talks on design, how to scale design across multiple channels, and a fantastic conversation coming up on AI and APIs. So I hope that we'll see some familiar faces back here today. And if you do want to watch any of the recordings, I will hopefully have them all available for you next week at some point.